Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to Coming in Hot with Abby Baird. I am your host, Abby Baird, and I am so excited to welcome you to Coming in Hot. Today, we are going to be answering all the questions about the next generation and the future of supply chain. And so, I have the absolute best person to join with me as we go through some of your questions. So, may I welcome to the stage the one and only Sarah Barnes-Humphrey.
Whoop whoop!
Hi,
Hey, Abby!
Sarah. Welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you.
I am
Um,
super excited to be here. I don't. Did I come? Was I on the first ever coming in hot? I think I
the
might have been.
very first one. It's been a bit.
It's
The
been a
we
little while.
the
Yeah.
people have missed you, but you are back and better than ever. That is
Well,
for
thank
sure.
you.
Before you let I'm assuming if you're tuning in, our audience knows a little bit about you, but before you kind of introduce yourself, as the audience comes in, please let us know where you're tuning in from. And then also, since this show is all about answering your questions about the future of supply chain, what questions do you have? What questions have you always been curious about? Maybe some spicy hot takes that you want to answer, that you want answered. So let us know. But until then, Sarah, please let us know, like, who are you? What are you about? Just a little bit for the audience.
Wow, that's such a loaded question.
I
So,
know.
Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, as well as the Blended podcast, Thoughts and Coffee live show that happens every Tuesday here on Let's Talk Supply Chain, and also now founder of the Blended Pledge, which is a new nonprofit, and we're giving away grants to diverse voices to say yes to speaking engagements so we can cover their travel expenses so there's no more barriers. Really, really excited. So as you can see, diversity matters in supply chain, and diversity definitely matters to me as well, and really involved with the Blended podcast. My story, so I grew up in supply chain. I was part of a family business in logistics. So we had a freight forwarding company. And so I spent about 8 years in operations, 8 years in sales, and then was director of sales and marketing. And I didn't really like what was out there in marketing. And so I started a podcast with a male co host, tongue in cheek. I called it Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. And then some things happened, you know, I ended up out on my own and started the Woman in Supply Chain series, but they didn't really resonate with the name Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. So I rebranded it to Let's Talk Supply Chain, and the rest is kind of history. I am a stepmom. I am a fur baby mama. I play baseball on a weekly basis. I am a catcher. So I wear all of the equipment and I throw guys out on second base. Well, actually, I don't throw them out anymore because they're so scared of me they won't run,
As
which
they
is no
shouldn't.
fun. And last night I hit a triple over a guy's head. I was very happy with that.
Oh, boss woman. Love to see it. Obsessed. Well, thanks for letting us know what you're about. I mean, I also love how I think that's going to perfectly transition us into this topic about how, yes, like you are this woman in a supply chain space, but you're also so much more than that. You are someone who is a fur mama and plays baseball, and you're just so much more than that. And I think that really reflects kind of in this shifting of business is that people are bringing more than just their professional selves to the table. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really exciting part about kind of the future of supply chain and business. And so I'm excited to get into that. But first, let's welcome some audience members. We have AJ and Philip joining us. AJ from Florida and Philip from Austria. So we are so excited for y'all to be here. But please let us know what questions you have about the future of supply chain, about our thought processes, our perspectives. But if you guys follow Let's Talk Supply Chain, you know that this week we published a poll on our LinkedIn and our social medias about what do you think attracts the future of supply chain to future roles? And the options that we included, and I think there's so many more outside of just these four, but
Mhm.
includes easy application, the vibe of the interview, the company's cultural imprint, and salary and benefits. And so to kind of start off the show, we're Sarah and I are going to kind of go through each one and talk about why this is valuable and why maybe my generation would really value this when looking for a next role or a next opportunity. As you can see, company's cultural imprint thus far is winning, but make sure everyone goes to the poll, continues to vote because it is still open and we want to hear your thoughts. But Sarah, let's just jump right into this. Let's just start with the first one, an easy application. Why do you think that would be important? Do you think that's important? And then in your experience, how did the application process impact the jobs and opportunities you were pursuing?
So I actually want to just sort of take a look at this poll holistically first, because when I was talking about this with Laura on Thoughts and Coffee on Tuesday, the culture and the salary and benefits were neck and neck at 43%. And now, just 2 days later, they're now, company's culture is 1% over. And I think the comments are really interesting on this
I
one as
agree.
well, which I think we'll get to, right? I think easy application. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like the generations that are coming up in supply chain, we need to make things easier. We need to make things more in tune. I mean, think about the apps that we use on a regular basis. And I'm going to use Uber for example. I use Uber a lot. I travel a lot. And it's an easy way to track where your driver is. And if your driver is like making circles over here and it keeps going from 8 minutes to 9 minutes to 10 minutes, I can cancel it and find another driver. Right. And I think because of that, we need to make things as easy as possible, because in our personal lives, if these things are done easily, we need to be able to translate that into the business lives, because that is what the next generations are looking for. It has to be easy. Otherwise, you're going to lose them at the first question, right?
Mm. Yeah, I know I have some people who are my age who won't even apply to a job if it requires a cover letter. Like there is just such a shift in having to do these extra steps to apply for a job that just doesn't feel right to cert obviously we can't generalize a whole generation, but like they don't want to do that extra step because they d- we this generation, even maybe people in the industry, they just deem it unnecessary. Like if you want to know this about me, interview me. Or again, similar to your point, like technology is evolving, and I think in supply chain specifically, we are always looking to be more efficient. We're looking to use technology really thoughtfully, and we're just trying to have this continuous improvement. And so whenever the application is just really challenging or you have to jump through all these hoops just to submit your application, that's really off-putting, and it's not, and it almost just seems like it's not worth it when you can almost go to LinkedIn and do an easy apply with like 3 clicks.
Yeah.
um
So, but I do want to talk about that cover letter a little bit though, because
yeah.
at the end of the day, the hiring process, it depends who you're going through and how much they know about that particular position. So how do you
Mhm.
stand out otherwise? So if you write an amazing cover letter, really giving them a reason why they should give you an interview if you really want that position, that's going to make you stand out. And so how else would you stand out? And I understand the cover letter. I understand not wanting to do that. However, how else are you going to stand out? Because if your resume doesn't make you stand out, I don't know how you're going to get noticed. But
Mhm.
I also agree with you, and I agree with Audrey too, is that if somebody has LinkedIn, why are we sending resumes? Because LinkedIn really is our resume. Now, the challenge with that, though, you and I had a conversation about this before we went live, is that you don't really like LinkedIn and the UX, and it's very difficult, or not very difficult to use, but like it's time consuming and things like that. So I think you can't have it both ways. I think you really need to, if you're going to use LinkedIn and you think people should use LinkedIn as your resume, you really need to use LinkedIn. And I think if you're not going to use a cover letter, I think you really need to think about how you're going to stand out otherwise, because you might just be overlooked at that point. So I think, that doesn't really have anything to do with the easy application, right? Because I think if you have a button that's like easy apply, that sort of covers that. But I think it's the standing out. I think it's, let's use LinkedIn for our resume. Well, use LinkedIn for your resume, but you got to use LinkedIn.
Mm.
That's the case.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that just shows kind of the shift, because I think a lot of people early on in their careers, I mean, I also think there's just a shift between stages of life when you are applying for jobs, when you are looking for these roles,
Yeah.
because a lot of people my age who are freshly out of college or they're about to graduate looking for internships, um, there's almost just like a desperate, like it's like I'll take anything. Like it's just like this mass application process rather than having this intentional, thoughtful process of being I'm really excited about this role. I think I'm qualified, and I want to stand out. Um, Now that would be interesting to know is if people my age who are applying for these jobs and they're more thoughtful and intentional rather than doing this mass application, what's their success rate versus the people who are just mass producing? Because if people have been on my show prior, I once had a a job interview research, someone from the career center, and she was speaking how this whole process is to stand out, and so the cover letter and your resume, they need to stand out. And then additionally, LinkedIn is bringing this whole new component where we can really show not just our, and I know we just made the bold claim that I don't like LinkedIn, but I think it is an opportunity to not just show our accomplishments, but show my personality,
Yeah.
because that can only go so far through a resume and a cover letter.
So
While I
true.
know if a recruiter were to come to my LinkedIn, they would see that I have a passion for supply chain, that I'm like pushing content and like building relationships within there. And so, I mean, clearly it's so much more than an application, but I think a shift that we've seen based off this question is um, why people are applying and how broader and almost how simple-minded my generation may view an application, like, oh, it's just an application, when in reality it's so much more than that, like how we
Yeah.
carry ourselves every single day is part of applying for a job and things like that. However, I do think when the application is just so low technology, when it's like you have to re-put in all of your you have to
Oh
manually
man,
put in
I
your whole
know. I don't
entire
like that.
resume like that, it's off-putting. And I think companies who are not taking the time to create a more just like a more aesthetic and efficient process, I think they are going to miss out on applicants, and
Mm.
potentially applicants who know their value and are like, well, I don't want to work for a company who can't even get their application together. Like,
So
and
it's an
so,
interesting point because a lot of times those companies will do that because they want to wean out the people that don't want to do it. Because if you think
interesting.
about it, right, they're getting like 500 or 600 resumes per position. And so how do you really like whittle it down to who who you like the type of person that you want to work with? And maybe they do that through the application process. So I don't like it either where you have to upload your resume and then you have to rewrite like the sections and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then I almost wonder from a corporation standpoint is that how they get from 500 applicants to maybe 100 is by who is actually going to do it. Because they know by
Yeah.
who's actually going to do it, they're motivated and really want to
Who's
work
gonna
for
put
that
the
company.
work in? Yeah, who's gonna put the
I
work
don't know,
in?
man.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. Listen, this application is a lot spicier than anticipated. A lot spicier than
So
yeah,
Audrey says, hold
I agree
on.
with
Audrey
Audrey. It's a
says
yucky way.
that's a
It's a
yucky
yucky
way
way
to
to test
test
it.
motivation. I get it, but then I guess sometimes I don't know. I don't know.
Well, so once you get past the application, hopefully you get an interview. What do the vibe of the interview, how do you think that attracts the future of supply chain? And like, do we think that's really important for us, or is it? I honestly think when I think about the vibe of the interview, I think that is not. I think that's just everyone. I think everyone really, if they are in an interview, they really are reading the energy. They're trying to understand. I think if we're going to talk about how diversity matters in supply chain, And this kind of brings in Philip's question is like, how can companies bring diversity from mere statements on the wall into a lived reality? Is that for me, whenever I'm in an interview, a vibe that matters is who is interviewing me. If
Mhm.
I have an interview panel and every single person looks the same, like that's automatically a red flag to me. Like if I'm
Mhm.
like my first encounter with this company has no diversity,
Yeah.
that to me impacts the vibe and it impacts the whole experience. And so that would turn me away from like
Right.
that role if there was just no diversity in an interview.
Mhm.
But then also like if I just don't naturally connect with people or like just like little nuances about how they view their job. And I think that also, I think when it's on the vibe of the interview, I think that's a two-way street. Like I think if the interviewer like not is I think the person being interviewed, if they're not asking effective questions to understand the company, then they might not get that holistic vibe. Um, what has been
Yeah.
your experience with interviews and like how you read the energy and the vibe and how that makes how that
Well,
makes
I
a
haven't
difference for
had a
you?
ton of those in my lifetime, not gonna lie. Um, but I think you're right. I think, if you're gonna be working with people on a regular basis, I mean, I don't wanna say 9 to 5 anymore because I think things are way more flexible than that, right? People can work at all hours of the day. But if you're going to work with people for the amount of time that you work with people on a weekly basis, you want to enjoy the space. You want to know that they care about you. You want to know that what you care about is what they care about. And if you want to have more time with your family, if you work better at 8 o'clock at night, you want to have that flexibility to do that. Now, I know, in some environments with meetings and things like that, it can't always happen. But I think also asking a question about how many meetings do you have a week? Because I think, there's way too many meetings. And so if a company has way too many meetings and that's not your vibe, then, you're going to know right away. And I think some of the other options on that poll was culture, right? I think the vibe of the meeting really determines the culture of the company and what you're getting into, right? Who you're going to be working for. What does that look like? Who you're going to be working with? What are the kind of the conversations that you have on a daily basis? Do you encourage conversation? Do you create safe space for people to be able to speak their perspectives and help with innovative ideas and raise their hand? Do you create opportunities for people within your organizations that aren't in the C suite, not in sales, to send them to a conference, either to attend or maybe to speak?
Hmm.
If those things are important to you, I think it's as much of an interview from the applicant's perspective than it is from the corporation's perspective. And making sure that you have those questions in mind when you go into it, thinking about what is important to me. What do I want that to look like? And is this company going to support me in what I want that to look like? But it's interesting because the last one on that poll was salary. And it is sort of hand in hand with that culture, which I was really surprised at.
Me too.
Now I know you have to get paid and all of those kind of things, but I really thought that the culture and what the company stood for and the values and the flexibility and all of that would potentially outweigh the salary, because I'm hearing from a lot of people that that's kind of their mindset. That's what they're thinking about. And so that one was kind of surprising for me.
I was surprised by that as well because I think in the supply chain space, but just I honestly think a generalization of like the Gen Z generation is that I guess I do have to include I always like to say I'm on the middle, but let's be real. Let's just be honest. I think the generalization about our generation is that as we step into spaces, no matter whether that be the products we're buying, the jobs we're pursuing, the friendships we have, the relationships in our life, I think I think the generalization is that we kind of have like like we value morality within the situation is that we want people to be we want the products we have to come from an ethical source and we want them to be sustainable and we want the people making them to be paid enough and we want all of those situations to just be like healthy and good. I've heard that like a younger person would buy a more expensive product if they knew exactly where it was coming from, rather than for the sake of buying something at the absolute lowest cost. And so I think that's just kind of a shift, a financial shift in that case. But I was surprised by that as well. And I'm interested to see who voted for this, because I don't necessarily know if it was people my age, I don't necessarily think
My people.
we would choose that. My peeps, I don't think we would choose. I just don't think we would choose that, because as someone who has recently entered the workforce, like that was not like what I was valuing compared to other components. Like
Mhm.
I valued exactly what we were talking about, like the culture, and if I felt like I had a space to ask these questions and to be fully like authentically me, but also if the work I was doing was actually going to make a difference, if there was opportunity for growth and change within a company, and then also diversity within that. So all I feel like I valued all those other things before I even thought about like salary
So
and
I want to ask
benefits.
you a question because you just took a new position. And so what was it
Of
about
my job?
the well, no, what was it about the interview process and all of that that really made you decide on taking that?
That is an excellent question. And I think that honestly, it circles back to what we were talking about asking the right questions, because
Mm,
I think, and kind of how, and that talks mentioned what we talked about earlier, is how a lot of people exiting college are just sending out these mass applications and just like hunting for a job. Whenever, so the role I just took, um, I accepted it because whenever I entered the interview space, I asked every single question under the sun. Like if a question popped in my head, like I just answered it. I just asked it, and the people in my interview, everyone, which there was diversity present in my interviews, um, they had an answer for everything, and they were honest and they were transparent. And also, just as someone who has a deep passion for supply chain, I could tell that they did as well. Um, but then also, another reason I accepted it is just the type of job and like where it was going to take me in the supply chain. Um, my previous roles kind of focused more downstream, and so I knew I wanted to kind of diversify my experience and look a little bit more upstream, and this role enabled me to do that. So
awesome.
I accepted this job because I felt like I could just ask all these questions, and now being like 3 weeks into my job, that has stayed the same. I've been able to ask these questions and to have this curiosity and to learn, but I'm also getting this whole new wave of experience that I never had before.
Well, and they
Um,
helped you see your path too, right?
yeah,
Like
they
you can
did.
see where your gaps are and the knowledge that you want to gain. And you were able to, I'm assuming just from what you were saying, you were able to articulate what you wanted that to look like. And they were able to articulate back to you what that career path and what that journey could be like with them. And so
Yeah,
you could sort of see into the future and really make sure that it was something that you wanted to do and that the opportunities for you to grow were there. Love that.
yeah. I I think that I think that, I mean, going into the comments, I think one person was like, "It's none of them. It's all of them," and that is so true. Like, there's so many other components that could have been included in this poll that are so important, not just to the future of supply chain, but to anyone looking for a new role. And so I think growth opportunities is huge. I think especially um, for people who are younger in their careers, now is the time to get that breadth and depth of experience,
Mhm.
rather rather than going into one role and staying there forever. I think there's this expectation of young people sometimes that, oh, you're fresh out of college, you need to know exactly what you want to do. Like, how you don't have a career path, you don't know exactly where you're going. Like, and it's just, I think that's just silly to think that in young 20s that we know what we want to do. Like, I can confidently say that I love supply chain, that I have a passion for it, and that's where I'm supposed to be. But if you were to ask me exactly what my dream role within supply chain would be, I couldn't tell you. I think that's just a part of getting into industry, learning what I like, learning what
Yeah.
I don't like. And so having that growth opportunity, is important, but I think what we can do right now, what we can do right now in pursuing other roles is what feels right now, what feels good right now, what's going to provide me opportunities where I can learn what I like to do. And and I think that process starts from the very beginning where you figure you need a job to the whole so by the time you're in your role growing and learning, like there's so many nuggets throughout the whole entire
Yeah.
process that impact why someone would be attracted to a role.
I'm
And
so
I
glad
think,
you said that because I'm listening to The Psychology of Money right now.
mm,
And one of the things that they said is that even your investing track, so whether you're talking about career or anything like that, it changes. When
yeah,
you're 18 to 25, middle career, late career, everything changes. Your goals change, your perspectives change, everything kind of changes. So if you think that you're going to get into something when you're 20 years old and still have the same vision and everything by the time that you're 40, it just doesn't happen in a variety of
hmm,
ways. I know we're talking about career today, but in a variety of ways. Anyways, I know that we've got to get to a TikTok too. So
yes, we do have a TikTok. We only have one today. It's pretty. I on it. It's kind of like a flashback. It's like I pulled it out of our Let's Talk Supply Chain archives. But for those of you watching, we so good. I don't know if it's like when they say you'll get back. When a company says they'll get back to you, and it's been 7 months and you haven't heard from them, because that if we have any employers in the audience, please let someone know they did not get the job. Please. Because I think on the topic of learning and knowledge, a lot of people, especially when applying for internships, they expect to hear back. And so they haven't heard back, they might put their eggs in one basket, and that's damaging. But also this TikTok just kills me. Like
I
how
love it. I mean, this can apply to so many different things. I mean, if you think about sales,
yeah.
right? You put
Yeah.
something out there, nobody gets back to you, or maybe they get back to you like so many follow-ups later. This can apply to job perspectives and nobody getting back to you and letting you know either way.
Mhm.
I think that that's also a sign of culture, and I think we have to be very intentional and very aware that if we're not getting back to people and we're not letting them know sort of where they stand, I think that you're not going to get those people to apply, and I think word of mouth is going to be hard on you because
Yeah.
if you don't hear back, right? If you don't get the position, you don't hear back, you're going to be talking about that company to a variety of different people, and then they might think to themselves, well, I don't want to do that either because I don't want to just not know or be left hanging.
Yeah, I think that's powerful because that's just so true. I mean, I think there's so many lessons that we take and we learn throughout our young career, but life is the world is a small place and word of mouth is definitely powerful. But
Mhm.
on the topic of TikToks, we do. For those of y'all that don't know, Let's Talk Supply Chain has a TikTok channel on Let's Talk Supply Chain. So y'all definitely post your TikToks about supply chain or career or business, and please tag us. We'd love to share them and collaborate with you. But if you're also interested in ever making content or taking over our TikTok, please let us know. It's just too fun to be on the TikTok let on the supply chain TikTok space. Um, but this honestly, Sarah, I feel like we touched so many good things in our 30 minutes. I feel like we could talk so much more, but if the audience hasn't, go to LinkedIn, vote in our poll. We want to know your thoughts, comments, and everything. But thank you so much for being a part of today, joining in the conversation. And Sarah, thank you so much for being here and just sharing your thoughts and your insight. I think it was really valuable having two different perspectives on this. And so it's always a joy, but thanks for being a part of it.
Well, you know that I love you and love what you're doing for the supply chain space on this show and on TikTok. And so thank you for making so much great content for supply chain professionals and even the next generation too.
Well, that's very kind, but likewise. Honestly, I should say likewise. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see y'all next month.